Hello again. Let's continue our discussion of CSS. In the last couple videos, I talked about using before and after to add pseudo elements to something. And we also talked about using the transition property to add some motion. And then the end result was this kind of close box animation, right? So let's imagine that this was something that we would want to use in a web page, right? So the div that we used here is maybe not a good markup element for this kind of thing because it's really a button. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to have a button, right? So I could say hello. Maybe that's like a regular button, right? Looks like this. And then, maybe sometimes we also want to have a close button, right? There's the close button, right? Okay. Except I don't want the close button to say close. I don't want it to look like that. What I want it to look like this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is set this up so we could use it with our framework, right? And anybody could apply this. And the idea is that I'm going to start with a regular button for markup, right? So anybody could use this just by creating a button on a page. And then what they'll do is they'll give it a class name. And they'll call it close button. Okay, so any button that has the class name close button will look like this. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as a challenge for you. Okay, so make this close button look like this button that we did here with the div. Okay, so it should work the same way, and make it 40 by 40 pixels. Okay, so it should be 40 pixels by 40 pixels. Okay, the one we made here is a little too big, right? So that's what it's the normal size, but that's still really large, right? So we want it to be 40 by 40, which I think would be a good size, okay? So you can stop the video and give that a try, and then start the video up, and I'll go through a solution for this, okay? Okay, great, welcome back. How did you do on that problem there? Let's talk about the solution, right? So, essentially we can kind of just reuse the code that we have here. We're gonna have to make some changes though, okay? So I'm gonna kind of put some space in here, call this close button, and I'm going to start with a selector. So my selector is going to begin with a button and then follow it up with close button class. So this selector here says that there's an element that's type button, right? Name of element. And then there's no space between this and the dot. So that says that this element also has the class name close button, okay? If this were an ID, you could put the hashtag here, okay? This would be a descendant, this would be a child, without any space or arrow, this is something that also is something else. So it's like, I'm a button tag that has this class name, okay? So that's my starting point, and then I'm going to give this a width of 40 was our number, right? And a height of 40. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The button by default comes with a border and a fill, so let's fix those. So let's say border will be 1 pixel. Actually, we'll write them out explicitly. So we'll say width of 1 pixel. Border color of, let's make it black, right? So I'll just put 0 there. And then maybe I'll also do the border radius. I feel like maybe it needs a few pixels. I'm going to say 5 pixel radius, okay? And what else do we need here? That looks pretty good. Oh yeah, the background color. So let's do background color of white. Okay, so there's my starting place right there, and then someone could position this in their page or place it wherever they wanted, right? But as long as they just started off with a button and gave it class name button, it's going to look like this. So now we need to add the X in the middle. So I'm going to start with, button dot close button, and then we'll start with after, and we'll say content is, the empty string, and then I'll give the content a width of 30 pixels, a height of, maybe 10 is going to be too much, might be too chunky. Let's do 10 for now, but we'll change it later. Right, so we'll do height of 10, and then I'll set a background color of black. Okay. What am I missing here? I'm missing something. Oh yeah, let's do a couple things here. So the button by default is an inline element. So I want to treat it like a box, like a block, but I also want it to be an inline element depending on how people use it. So I'm going to give it display inline block. Okay, so let's do that. And then what else do we need here? Oh yeah, I want to be able to position these two elements inside here. So I'm going to say position and then make it relative. So this will act as the positioning context, and then for the after element, I'll give it a position of absolute. Okay, oh there, now we're finally showing up. I don't know why it wasn't showing up earlier, something about the, I don't know, relative or absolute position, but anyway, there we go, right? So now if you notice, the upper left corner is at the center here, right? So I want to be able to position this, and it's going to be a little weird because if I use transform and then I do translate and I say, now what do I got to do? I got to say like, okay, so you're in the middle, right? And that means that this is 40 minus 30, so that means I'm at 15, which is the center, or no, 20, which is the center, and then this thing is 30 pixels wide, so I got to go negative 15, so I could go negative 15 pixels like this. That seems like it's off by a pixel. Let's go negative 14. I don't know why. Actually, now it seems like it's too far to the right, I don't know. Negative 15, right? So that would kind of work, right? And then maybe I also want to come up half the height. So we'll do negative 5 pixels, right? And the math of that is not hard, but it might be hard. I don't know. I've had enough trouble with it, but it's not that hard. But it might be easier for you sometimes for me anyway, it's easier if I measure from the upper corner. But the problem here is that when I'm using transform and translate, it doesn't start from the upper corner. It starts from the current position, kind of like 0, 0 for wherever this thing is, right? I don't know why. It's just the way that they did this. There's probably some reason for it. I don't quite get the difference, right? But what we can do is this. If I've made this position absolute and I made the container position relative, let me comment this out for a moment. What I can do is I can give this left of 0, and that'll move it all the way to the left side, and then I can give it a top of 0. And by doing this, I've moved it to the upper left corner, and now all the translations here will be relative to that upper left corner. And so I don't know if that makes it easier, but in some cases it might. So I kind of like this trick, like just kind of zero something out or move its upper left corner to the upper left of the container and then measure your translation from there. Okay, so let's see. So now if I measure from here, if I take the 30 and I subtract that from the 40 of the container, then that leaves me 10. And if I put 5 on the left and 5 on the right, then I would want to move it over 5 pixels, right? And that should put me close to the center there. And then I could do the same thing with the vertical, right? So this is 40 pixels tall, and I want to go to the center. So I go half of the 40, and I go to 20, right? Oh wait, but that would be the top edge, so I'd have to subtract half of the height, so I'd have to go 15, right? So that should put me pretty close to the center. I still feel it looks like it's off by a pixel. Maybe that's like an optical illusion. I don't know. Looks like it's off by like 1 pixel. I am kind of zoomed in here on the web page though, right? So maybe if we're not zoomed in, it looks like it's in the center. I don't know, right? Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it too much. We're pretty close, right? Okay, so that doesn't look too bad, right? Oops, let me cancel that there. Okay, so let's do the other box, right? You can stop the video and try that on your own if you want, right? Okay, so I'm gonna copy the first one, right? And then I'm gonna just change this to before, okay? So I got before and I got after, and then I'm gonna add a rotation to each of these. So I'm gonna say rotate, rotate, let's do 45 degrees. And then this other one right here, I'm going to add rotate negative 45 degrees. And now I have my X. I feel like that X is like a little chunky. So let's maybe change this. Instead of 10, let's make it 8 and 8. 6, maybe 6, right? So let's do 6 there, right? And now if now that's going to move it a little bit, right? So I got to make sure that I calculate these numbers, right? So what did I do here? I subtracted the height. So 6 minus 40 is 34. So this should be, 17 maybe, right? And the other one should be 17. Okay, I'm going to talk about this later, but we could also calculate this mathematically using the calc function. I think I mentioned that at some point in one of these videos, but you could also calculate it this way, and that might be good. For right now, I'm just going to get it working. So this is good. We can go back later and kind of improve things. So anyway, so now I've got the thing working. Let's get the hover state going, right? So this is the close, but maybe I'll have them be level, and then we'll use this value here for the hover state, right? So let's copy these two things right here. So I'll copy that one. That's the after, and then I'll get the before, and right. And what I want is I want this one to borrow. This is the before one, so I'm going to put this here because this is correct for the final state, and then this one is correct for the after button in the final state, right? With the rotation. And now I can go back and edit these two. So I'm going to change this to 0 degrees. And 0 degrees here, right? And then these two down here, I have these both set to after, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze in the hover right here. So I'll put colon hover, no spaces, right? And then I'll do colon hover right here. So now the two things are level, but when I hover over them, I'm going to get the X. Okay, so when the hover kicks in, then these two numbers and the 45 degrees are going to be applied, right? And we can also give it a transition so that the things move instead of jumping to the end point, right? And then I'll need, this is kind of the two lines, I'll need to move them a little bit. So up here, I've got the after button. I'll put that one above. So this is the horizontal position and this is the vertical position. Let's move it up 5 pixels, so I'll make it 12, right? And then I'll move this one down 5 pixels, so it'll go to 22, I guess, right? So that doesn't look too bad, right? Still seems like it's off by like half a pixel, but I'm not going to worry about it. So we're pretty close. Now let's add some animation, right? So on the close button up here, I'm just going to give it a, or actually I guess I got to do it on the after and before. So maybe for the after, I'll do transition of, 150 milliseconds. And over here on the close button before, I'll do transition of 150 milliseconds, right? Now there we go, got some animation there, so that looks pretty good. So looks great. Let's try one more feature here, right? So if you look at the regular button, when I click on it, it becomes active, right? So it doesn't do anything on the hover. Ours has a hover effect, right? But when I put the cursor over it, nothing happens. But when I press the button down, it changes color, right? It might be nice if our button had a feature like that, right? So when I press down, I want it to change. And just to keep things simple, I'll just have it invert. So the X will become white and the background color will become black, okay? So we can handle that with an active state. To do that, I'm going to copy the selector here for the after, and then I'll copy the selector here for the before. And when I'm in the hover state, we get this effect, right? But I'm going to change the word hover here for the word active. So active is when you have the cursor over an element and you're pressing the button down, right? So when you're pressing the mouse on it, it's active, right? This is active right there. This is active, it's just not doing an animation. This is active when I press the button, right? So I'm going to set this to active right here. And I'll also need to have a style for the button itself. So I'm going to copy this one here, and I'll put all three of these at the bottom. So for the button, I'm going to say your background color will become black, right? And then I'm going to add, so now it's black, right? But what I want to do is I only want to have the black color when we're in the active state. So I'm going to add :active there. So now you can see when I press down, it becomes black, right? And then on these guys, I want their background color to become white. So I'm going to say, background color is FFF. And then I'll do, I'll just copy this one right here. And let's see, so I hover over it, I get the X, and when I click down, I get the inverted X. Okay, so anyway, so that's kind of a good start here. And let me see what you do with this. Apply this to your framework. Design a close button. That you can use by just adding the close button to an element, right? The close button class. And then I'll see you in the next video.